Hello, and welcome to Somalabl the podcast. My name is Wanja Kariuki, and I will be your host. Somalabl is a call to find ways to bring more awareness in our day-to-day in order to bring balanced and wholesome lives. Join us as we hear the personal journey of everyday people who are taking steps to bring more health, wellness, and joy to their lives. And now, here's today's episode. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed are solely those of the host and the guest featured. For any medical or nutritional advice, please contact your personal doctor or a medical professional.
Hi, Wanja.
Are we starting?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Straight into it.
Oh, Lord. Wait, how do you know my name? I thought you were supposed to introduce yourself.
An intro has already played. That said, hi. This is and told us who we are. But jokes aside, so I want you to start by introducing yourself.
Okay. So, Kenyan style, my names are
Georgina.
Oh, that's the low-key. So great. Who am I? That's an interesting question because also I told you I'm going through this existential stage.
Okay. Wow.
Were you trying to define who are you really as a person? No. So am I what I do or am I what I am? If that makes any sense.
Okay.
Like, is it the things that I, like the labels you hold, business, family, all that stuff? Is that who you really are?
Or the job you do.
Or the job you do? Or are you these like very existential sort of terms like, I am love, I am peace, I am joy.
Wow.
But I am somebody who really enjoys bringing people together to do powerful things. I believe actually one of my best scriptures, which I keep forgetting where it is, but I know it's somewhere in Genesis, and it talks about, and it says something to the extent of, behold, the people are now one, and now nothing shall stop them. Literally every time I say it, I feel goosebumps, right? So I find that a lot of what I do and what I enjoy is seeing how can I bring people together to do a common thing.
I'm so glad you said that because as you were talking, I was trying to remember I've actually been trying to remember when I actually met you, and I don't think I can remember that moment. What, of course, I remember the most of is us working together.
Yeah.
But then the way you've just described yourself suddenly makes sense in the context of conversations we had last year.
Yeah.
Because I kept asking you, I don't understand how you're so passionate about somebody else's dream and vision. But then now in the context of what you just said, I'm like, you are 100% that person. Like I can see a through line in all your work. Like coming back to that.
Yeah.
That's because I also don't remember when I discovered that you are vegan, but you are vegan.
Yeah.
So how does that connect to that idea of like who you define yourself as? Do you see it fitting into it?
Yeah. In a way, yes. So how I came into veganism is interesting because I've ventured into like the stereotypical tree hugger version of being vegan, but that's definitely not how I came to it. And so it's interesting how, you know how they tell you what's your ideal self, like what are you aspiring as a person. So for the longest time, in the middle of what I call my mess growing up or whatever, I always yearned for discipline. Yeah, I yearned to be a disciplined person because I was such a ruckus. I still, like, you'll see elements of ruckus in me every once in a while. Like, I'll have a dress and I'll have like boots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for the longest time as a kid, I remember wanting to be disciplined, maybe because that's what all the teachers used to say, and being a good kid was also being about having discipline, and I really didn't feel like I had discipline. And as I got older, I realized discipline was just having consistent dedication to something.
Oof.
Right?
Nice.
And I'm like, because I'm just this like bouncing thing, it's hard for me to do that. So lately, in maybe the last 2.5, 3 years, is what I've realized, veganism actually helped me become disciplined in my food. It was just a very easy way to put up barriers or sort of barrier is not a good word. Boundaries when it came to food, because I didn't have any.
Wow.
I didn't have any because I had zero sense of what is food, what is it supposed to do for you, da 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 da. So going vegan helped me eliminate a lot of things that I was just overindulging in. And it was just an easy pass, to be honest. There's another story of how I did come into veganism, but when I put it all in context, really, it really just helped me stay the course of good, healthy eating habits, because now I couldn't eat like 2 chocolate bars, which I would do in the morning. Like I would wake up and I'd be like, look in my fridge and I'd be like, what's for breakfast? Okay, I'll just have like 3 candy bars. And then later on, I'll be like, snack. Candy bar sounds good. Like literally that was my entire day. Candy bars, gummy bears, like, and I'm not like 15 or 13-year-old kid at that time. I was probably in my early 20s, like living like that, right? Pizza, name it, I ate it. I was living in the States at this time, obviously. So literally like everything and anything goes. And food was not even like a construct. It was just like, this is about me enjoying myself and having what I want to do, regardless of what it did or what benefited or use it had in my body.
You know, it's interesting because when you say the word discipline, for me, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is character. It's probably education, because I feel like that's where that word was used over you, you know. I would never think food. So for me, it's very fascinating that when you were at that stage thinking discipline, it was a thing that came from food. But what was that connected to? Do you think there's a part of that had to do with your personality as Wanja? Because see, food choices are also connected to how you feel.
It was an end goal. It was not. It was not something I understood as a process, which is what I do now, right? So when you say how did that connect with me at that point, so the way even what I call like my journey to food wokeness, how I became food woke, it started as a fast. I was in church. And this lady was giving a testimony. I can't remember what she was praying for, but she was fasting from like donuts and sweets and stuff. And remember, I just told you, like I used to,
sugar.
I was a sugar addict, like basic, like bottom line, I was a sugar addict. And I used to have, I'm still like, bouncing all over the place, but it's very regulated. I used to have major highs and major lows, right? Like I'd be like, really energetic and then just drop, obviously, because of what I was eating and just my mental health, all of that. So she talked about how she was able to fast from donuts. And there's this cafe or whatever you want to call it in the States called Dunkin' Donuts. And it's really big in the East Coast. And it's like a way of life for everyone. The way we have mamambogas, Dunkin' Donuts is mamambogas for people in the East Coast. Like, it's where you get your coffee. It's where you get your snack. Like you just...
Hey, I've had Dunkin' Donuts. I understand.
You understand?
Yeah, because when I lived in South Africa, it came and it was mad, and it's so cheap also. So it's just like you're walking from the train to go to work, and you're just like, I feel like I am a little peckish.
Yeah.
And it just becomes part of your lifestyle.
It became part of your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So she said how like people would try and meet with her. She's like, oh, when you're fasting, like now that's when everybody, when they want to meet up, they're like, oh, let's meet for Dunkin' Donuts. And you're like, but why?
Yeah.
So, and she was like, yeah, but I overcame. And in 40 days, she was like, I stayed away from the cookies. And honestly, that simple thing just blew my mind. And that's why I'm so excited we're doing this, because prior to that, girl, I had tried diets.
Oh, you have?
Of course. It's so sad. When I moved to the States, I was about like 14, 15. And already the idea of being skinny, not lean, was like the image that was there. And it was high school and pressure. And I was round. And, there was like those shakes that you do.
Yeah.
So at 15, I was dieting, right?
That was the season of diet pills as well, wasn't it? Or was that later?
Well, I did try the Chinese green tea. Yeah, wow, the one that makes you run and sit on the toilet for like 3 days.
Yes.
I tried the shakes. I don't remember what else I had tried. I think much later I even tried Atkins. Like,
damn.
It was crazy, right? So I was already like, I had a sense of like what I want my body to look like, but not a very good relationship with food. So that connection I made with her and her story is why I'm excited we're doing this, because I'm like, somebody out there is going to connect with something and their journey is going to begin. So I believe for me, my journey started there, because then at that time I was like, okay, I said, God, if she can do that, I can do it too. Because at that point it had just seemed nothing was making sense. So during that fast period, I know this is going to sound a little eclectic for some people, but it was a very intuitive process, right? Given that it was in a church setting, I really felt led by God. I was, praying a lot. So I think that had something to do with it too. And it was just giving up small things. And I stopped doing anything that was processed. And I know this sounds crazy, but I would hear things like nothing out of a plastic, right? Which literally translate to whole foods. And, I just started eating wholesome, blah, blah, blah. And then fast forward, I remember I actually went to see a doctor because I was having more regular bowel movements and I thought something was wrong with me. This is how disconnected I was from information. So I went freaking out. I was like, doctor, what's going on? Da, 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 da. And so they took the vitals, blood tests. And then they were like, okay, has your diet changed? And they were like, and I was like, well, yeah, I was eating da, da, da. And now I'm eating da, 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 da. And the doctor just kind of looked at me like almost in disbelief, like, is this chick serious? And he was like, you realize fiber, which is coming from the fruits and vegetables that you're eating, makes you be more regular. Mind blown.
All right.
Right? Like something so basic.
As an adult. Wow.
So I was like, what? There's cause and effect when it comes to food. And after that period, it was obviously the usual 40 days Lent thing. I really now started being conscious. Right. And even the idea of Somalabl came from that period, the practice of Somalabl, because before I would eat anything, because I was in this element of like, I gotta do this Lent right, I gotta do this fast right, I didn't want to mess up. So I was just like, okay, if I did take something that was in packaging, what was it? And I would always turn the label and read. And this is how it all began, just being very conscious, like, am I eating things that are aligned with what I'm dedicating myself during this fast to do?
Because fasts are quite restrictive in terms of what you eat.
They are.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot, and it was,
So I'm curious, just going back to, because you definitely were in a very specific emotional place by the time you're hearing this lady speaking. What was that? What was going on emotionally that connected to you wanting to lose weight?
Oh, I don't even know if it was just the weight or I think the weight was just one thing that I wanted to feel like was going right in my life. I was struggling financially. School wasn't going right, like relationships weren't going right. Like I just didn't feel like anything was working. Not I didn't feel nothing was working for me at that point, right? Which I know this is a bit fast forward because I was actually thinking about this in the shower today and I was coming here. And I was like, when I compare myself then and now, what I take time to appreciate, because I had good things going on at that time. I had obviously great family, great opportunity. I was surrounded by a really good circle of girlfriends who were like, prayerful, amazing, positive women. I did have a lot of good things. And even though I was struggling financially, I had a job. It wasn't great, but, so there were things I could have been grateful for at that point. But the state of mind I was in at that point, nothing was working. Right. But even this morning, so I was like, the person I've become is able to literally appreciate, like I just recently got my toenails done and it's like pink and white. And that just makes me happy. Wow. And I was like, find joy in the smallest things. Just pick like a small thing and just bloom it into joy. You know what I mean? So I know that's like jumping forward, but yeah, back then in the state of mind I was, nothing was working out.
Why does talking about and thinking about that season in comparison to now make you emotional?
What makes me emotional about it?
Yeah.
It's just how much I took for granted. I had a relationship probably about 3, 4, whatever many years ago, that was not that great, but out of it, it taught me not to take anything for granted. And so looking back, I'm like, man, I had so many things that I could have watered. Those, I call them maybe, small seedlings of joy. There's so many seedlings of joyous moments that I could have watered and just bloomed and just have a more fulfilling experience. But I was just so caught up in maybe this sort of idealistic standard that family and everybody expects you to live up to that I just didn't feel like I was living up to, so I wasn't good enough, right? So when I look back on that, I'm like, oh, what a wasted opportunity.
Right.
What a wasted opportunity to really have just lived a fuller life then, because there are things I could have done then that I can't do now.
Yeah.
That I could have exploited. I could have been weightlifting then.
If you knew then what you know now.
If I knew then what I know now.
Yeah.
But it just makes me, I don't want to say sad, because that's not me anymore. When I reflect on things that didn't work out the way I thought they should, now I truly see them as stepping stones of lessons, not failures.
That's good.
It's taken a lot of work not to label those failures.
I'm so glad you mentioned weightlifting and work, because I want to take you back to that moment where you've done the fast, you've discovered this new lifestyle that makes you feel good in your own body. But that still wasn't the vegan.
Yeah.
So how do you get from there to becoming, what was that journey like to end up choosing veganism specifically?
So first of all, in a span of 40 days, I probably dropped like 25 to 30 pounds.
Wow.
So
what's that in kilos?
Like 15.
Oh, wow. That's a
like
lot.
15, 12 to 15 kilos, right? So I was feeling lighter. I was sleeping better. My period got regular.
Nice.
My state of mind, I was just more rational to a certain extent. I was a completely different person. Spiritually, I felt great. So I was like, oh, wow, what's next level, right? So it was now from then, it was like a slow build up to seeing, first of all, sustaining that, right? Because as you know, Lent is a short period, 40 days. So what happens after 40 days? You go back to the crazy. So there were slip ups and whatever, and it wasn't really, I don't want to say it was like a full circle moment where now it was like this aha moment and I'm stepping into my new being. It was sort of like opened a door to something that was exciting. And now it's like, let me not close that completely while I explore the rest of this house and kind of live the life the way I was living. So that door just kind of continued to bring in enough light into this new possibility of life that I could live in. And subsequent fasts after that, I stayed at that church for I think like 3-4 years after then, where every Lent now felt to me like an opportunity to, how can I do more?
Level up,
of this. I had such a, like a major win. And I kept trying different things. Like, I remember one of the other fasts that I ended up doing, one of it was actually a little crazy. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like this spirit of modesty. And can you imagine for like the 40 days actually ended up being like 80 months. I used to cover my head.
What?
Yeah. It's crazy. For like almost 8 months to a year. And it wasn't like a hijab or anything. But it was
like Old Testament vibes.
Old Testament vibes. Covered my head. And it was wild. I don't remember if it involved like, because I was always like in long clothing anyway, so I don't think it made, and actually also that had to do with how insecure I was feeling in my body.
Oh, I see.
So that's why I also used to like cover up.
Like fold inward.
Yes. And I used to have like these long, which I have actually today, these long like sweaters, and being in the East Coast, you have like cold weather, so it's an excuse to bundle up or whatever. So I was very like into a modest state, so that was like one of the things. It was a head covering. Then one fast, I actually went raw vegan.
Damn.
And it was, because I remember in the prayer, when I prayed, it was like nothing with heat. And I never knew what raw veganism was, right? So I tell you, some of these things are so intuitive, and I really feel like we really do in the inner part of our soul being, or whoever you are, know the path that you're supposed to be on. And so I was like, nothing with heat, what the heck does that mean? And so I started Googling or whatever and came up upon raw veganism. And actually I didn't come up on raw veganism, I just came about raw food. Right? But it was just easier for me to just eat raw vegan just because it's more easily available, like the fruits, the vegetables, all of that. And the only thing that I was eating that was not vegan at that time was goat cheese.
Okay.
Because in Whole Foods, they had just started doing this raw milk sort of stuff. And they had raw milk goat cheese, which is, I miss that. And then after that last fast where I went raw vegan, and that went on for 8 months. So I would always like extend every year after my first fast.
Wanja, you are eating raw food for 8 months.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it ended up being a lot of juice, a lot of like veggies. I tried sprouting, which is what a lot of raw vegan people do, which is they'll take like chickpeas or basically all lentils, soak them overnight. And then when they sprout, they're kind of cooked.
Yeah.
And they use like spices and whatever. So that was too much work. I never got into that. So I would end up doing like salads, a lot of juices. And that was like.
And physically, were you feeling any different from what you'd done before?
Yeah. So funny, I didn't lose weight.
Okay.
I think I probably gained like maybe about 6, 7, 8 pounds because it's a lot of sugars, right?
Okay.
Hardly any protein because mind you,
of course,
right? You get there are some fruits and vegetables that have protein, but it's like
minimal compared to
like 2 grams for like 100 grams of something, right? Of spinach or whatever. So I was doing a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
And nuts, a lot of nuts. So yes, I had protein, but not as much, but it was mostly fats and carbs. But mentally, I've never had a period in my life where you literally feel light. Mentally, the clarity, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was incredible.
I think the thing I like about this conversation, and I'm so glad we started it with the fasting, is because there's so many people we know. IF is such a big thing. Intermittent fasting is a huge thing. And sometimes I'm like, are people just addicted to this thing? But I'm like, it's also part of that your body is craving this feeling of just lightness and clarity.
Yeah.
And maybe it's trying to figure out how to sustain that. But the thing you added also to your journey was fitness. So at which point do you start being this version of Wanja?
Guy! Boy. So the eating and the fitness did not progress on the same level and I'm glad they didn't, because I had to find my foothold and my guardrails or my boundaries with the eating before I progressed to the fitness, because remember, veganism made me discipline. But that's just one part of fitness.
Yeah.
The other part is the active lifestyle. And the active lifestyle, I would buy like all these videos. There's this thing in the States called Beachbody, where they produce all these different like workout videos. They do like booty lift or slim your thighs. There's a lot.
Just before summer.
Yeah. It's always before summer. And it's always like a 3-month, 6-month thing.
Program,
so I would do it for like 2 months, then stop. I would try running for like a week and stop. It was so inconsistent. I remember one time I even got a gym membership, and it wasn't cheap because, whatever, grad school, blah, 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 broke. And still didn't go for like, I paid like a year's membership, went like 3 or 4 times. So there was no consistency there. There was no discipline there. But when I did used to work out, like even for like a week, I would feel so good. I would feel so powerful. And I'd be like, man, I really need to like get with this, right? So because at this point, I've been good with my food. Like the Somalabl thing, the reading the labels never left me from that first fast. The appreciation for just how much better I felt physically, how much regularity it brought to me, that stuck. So that association was created like, oh, when I eat well, I sleep better. I'm a better person. I have regular periods. I have, regular bowel movements. There was a very direct correlation with the eating. So now that was sort of cemented in me. The fitness had not quite clicked. It still now became this thing of this body that I wanted. Right? Because even in the middle of all this, I still had this pudgy sort of look that I could not get rid of for some reason or another. So actually, it wasn't until I moved to Kenya.
Really?
Yeah, because when I think about it, it wasn't until I moved to Kenya because I sort of started moving back around 2017, 2018, thereabout. And here now, because life is a lot different than it is in the States, I had the luxury. Honestly, till this day, I still call it a luxury.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm not saying it's not possible to do this in America. First of all, I didn't have the sort of budget that could afford a personal trainer.
Yeah.
definitely not. Could not afford that. And a gym, come on. The most I could do is like, $18.99 videos or however much, or $40 videos that I could follow for like 3 months. And then here I had more support from like family, my mom especially, to be able to offset some of the burdens that I was bearing when I was in the States. And so and I started out with hiking.
Oh, nice.
Funny enough, church also. Church was doing a hike. I was like, oh yeah, let me do this thing. Got really hooked, and it was just that feeling of, remember how Ida talked about, Ida, one of our guests, talked about feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
I really craved that too. So hiking, as awful as it was, going up a hill and getting to the summit is like such a moment of fulfillment and like, wow, I did that, So after that, started out at like CrossFit for like a week, left, found another gym, started doing my own thing. I mean, it was just, I don't even know how to tell this story because it was like start, stop. I do this thing, I stop, I go back, I start another one.
But why? Because for me, I was just like, you could have just kept doing what you were doing. Why did you feel, was it still the body image thing?
Of course.
Got you.
It's taken a while before now that I'm like...
Yeah, because you look cute now. I'm just like, I don't know what you look like before, but I'm like, I've only known this version of you. So
really?
I've never seen you look any other way. We need pictures, Wanja.
Oh, I will have to put pictures
we'll have
up.
to put before and after.
We'll have to, because like my nieces, they're just cute little terrible beings sometimes.
Yeah.
So every once in a while when I give them a hard time about eating meat, they'll send me this picture like of me like diving into like crispy like chicken, and they'll be like, you were saying. So I'm sure there's that picture somewhere, and like my cheeks up to here. It's taken, honestly, I would say, what year is this? 23.
Yeah.
I've probably started feeling comfortable in my body in the last 3 years.
Wow. Damn, that's from the pandemic. Okay, interesting. Interesting. And what does that look like for you now? How do you define comfortable in my body? Is it when you pick up that deadlift? What does it feel like for you? Also, it's important to tell the people that you are a weightlifter.
I know. About to break records, by the way. I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, I remember her name.
Yeah, please. No, I'm so serious though. We say this like we're joking, but like
we're not joking,
the next time we have this podcast, it's gonna be like, you just won, like, and I'll be like,
I'll be at the stadium after your podium moment.
I know, after my podium moment.
Yeah. And also, why weightlifting? Because I met you when you were a CrossFitter.
Yeah, you did.
Which I forget sometimes because I really just know you as a weightlifter now. So also, why settle on that? What is it about weightlifting that connects everything for you? So Wanja the vegan, Wanja who's conscious about her food and being disciplined. Why weightlifting? So
it's funny. I had this conversation with Carl, Ida's husband, who is now I'm training with. And I was just telling him, back to the question that we talked about earlier, like, what does it mean being vegan? And I said discipline, right? So weightlifting is what has clicked for me in terms of discipline.
Wow.
That's the thing. And the reason I used to be into CrossFit or high intensity sort of workouts was because I felt like I would go in and just go,
yeah, all the time.
All the time, right?
Yeah.
And for the longest time, because I just told you my personality is, it's bubbly. It's also very high energy.
High energy, yeah.
I'm a high energy person. So I just thought, well, what I need is an activity that will allow me to continue to be this high energy so I can fully express myself, right? But then it got to a point where I started being miserable.
Really?
Yeah, I started being really miserable doing CrossFit because honestly, like the night before, I would dread going to sleep because I'd be like, damn, I have to wake up tomorrow.
Yeah, and when I met you, you were also doing like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Because I used to come in at 5 a.m. and I'm like, who are these babes?
We would get there at 3:30.
Damn.
We would get there at 3:30, start at 4. But I I remember also admiring that because I remember watching, there's this show in the States called, not Biggest Loser, Extreme Weight Loss.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember seeing this guy so this program where you go on this extreme plan for like 3 months, you have this coach with you, and then the coach leaves you to go home and manage what you've learned from the center by yourself.
Yeah.
And there was this one episode where this guy would wake up at like, I think 4 or 3, something crazy. And I'd be like, hey, there are people like that. I was like, that could never be me.
Yeah.
But in the back of my head, I'd be like, though it would be nice to be me.
Yeah.
And so I remember even the period where I would wake up at 3 a.m. in as much as I felt like crap doing it, I'd be like, wow, when did I become this person who gets up at 2:30 at the time to get to the gym for 3:30?
As a business owner, also, it's simple. And who is a mother?
It's like...
I think we need to paint the full picture because that is wild.
It's... Honestly, but the support from my family has just
so
taken
great.
a lot of that off. So I'm not like, so yeah.
Discipline.
I could not believe I have become that person.
Wow.
Like anybody who knows me, actually, I wish there are people who knew me then, like especially from the States. And they're like, you woke up at what time to do what? They'd be like, that's a lie. That's not
Impossible.
her. Impossible. That's not who she is, right?
Yeah.
So it's been amazing to be able to do these very incredible, sporadic things, because then they show me that ideal that I crave is actually possible in certain ways.
Nice.
Right? Like, I was never a person who would wake up in the gym to go early. Like, and now it's who I am. It was never there before. The possibility was never. I had tried different ways to get there, but then I had become. So yes. So that was really tough. I mean, they still had moments of like, wow, like I can't believe I'm doing this thing. But then it just became too much for me. And I was miserable. It was taking too long. And I remember, I think it's Mavala who was like, yo, you're built like a weightlifter. You should be doing weightlifting.
This was Mavala's idea.
Yeah.
Lies.
I had heard it from like Coach Winnie at some point when I was at CrossFit. She'd be like, oh my God, you're so like, cause I'm short and like, whatever. And my proportions for my arm, because weightlifting, like if you have long arm or short torso or whatever.
Oh, yes, I've heard of those before. Yeah, there's a proportion thing. Yeah.
There's a proportion thing, but the way my arms are, my torso, my legs, like I'm just proportioned well for weightlifting, right? Because I'm short. So Winnie had said it a while back, but it never really like clicked. And at some point, I'd actually even trained with Webster. So all these are like weightlifting people.
Coaches,
so Winnie,
and
obviously, former national team member of weightlifting. Webster, same thing. So I think and that's why I'm like, I truly believe this thing, like, once you pursue your passion, the road will rise to meet you. Because there's no reason, why was I, like, at some point I trained with Winnie Kidogo and I was at weightlifting, then I left it. Then during pandemic, I actually started training with Webster over the online.
Virtually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Okay.
I trained with him, but it hadn't really...
You weren't feeling it yet.
Yeah, it was just like another thing. I was like, is it gonna make me like skinny and
Right, the perspective was different.
Yes. So then Mavala was just like, yo, you should really, and I was like, man, it's so boring, it's so slow and blah, blah, blah.
Just 2 movements, or is it 3? Yeah,
it's 2 movements. And I'm like, what is this? And it's so funny because the thing that I was running away from about weightlifting was actually the thing I needed. Remember, I was drawn to CrossFit because of the intensity. And it allowed me to just go hard and ham. Because in my head, I believed that unless I go hard and ham, I'm not going to get to what I want, right? It's this sense of, if I don't work hard or strive or sweat for it, it's not going to come.
Ain't good enough.
Yeah? Weightlifting is the opposite. You really need to get into the flow. And so the thing I was telling my trainer that I realized is it made me focused and calmer. I know it's hard to believe. People are like, oh, she's calmer now.
So you see me, I believe, because I'm from this side of the track. And literally when I started doing the movements, I was like, oh, this is what they mean. But it's hard to explain that if you haven't tried weightlifting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it forced me to focus. It forced me to be patient. Slow down. And this thing they tell you, oh, get in the zone.
Yeah.
I never understood that until I started weightlifting. Because with weightlifting, you literally have to, as you approach the bar to do the movement, you literally have to just close everything out, shut out the noise, and trust that everything you've been told will come together in that moment. So that's sort of just, free fall, like just jump. There's water at the end of this. There's safety at the end of this. That's not how I grew up. That was not the mentality I grew up with. I grew up with the understanding that you have to strive and you have to work hard and you have to push. And if you don't do, the results will not come. Yo, I get excited about going to the gym now.
Wow.
Every single day. And it's been maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, I think.
Again, Wanja, a year. I feel like you've been doing this for 3 years.
Thank you. But this is well, technically it's been longer, but then it's a culmination of all of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, because think about it. I started training with the boys after pandemic.
Yeah, 2021?
Yeah.
Already? Yeah, 21.
Yeah, 21. Right about then, right? And then it was like start stop, because I was away in the States for like a while, then I came back. And then part of 2022, wait, 22 was last year. No, maybe I started with them 2020. When was pandemic?
Yeah, 2020. Because I also started with them in 2020. Pandemic was end of 2019 into 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started.
Oh, yes, it's possible. Yeah.
2020 is when I started with them through 21. But it was never like super consistent. But it was the first time that now I was like, oh, okay.
This is real. Yeah.
This is real. And getting consistent and whatever. And then ended up, whatchamacallit, getting into weightlifting towards the end of that. So the end of 21.
Okay.
Yeah, like mid,
it was last
I
year,
would
22.
say,
Okay.
like starting like July, early 21 is when I started weightlifting. And it wasn't consistent because of the travel. So when you put everything together between now and then, it's like a year and a half.
Wow, that's amazing. And for me now, I'm just like, I really want us to learn this conversation at Somalabl, because for me, there's even if you told me the story of the company on its own, I'm just like, yeah, cool brand. But then when you tell me your story and then you tell me about the company, it makes sense. It's not just a business venture. But yeah, so tell us about Somalabl.
So when I was in the States, when I had this awakening and all of that stuff, so part of the reason I even ended up going vegan was because I couldn't afford meat. I mean, truth be told, why? Because now I was very conscious about what I was putting in my body, right? And the more I read, I realized like a lot of the food that we were having in the States, which is very common, is pumped with hormones and antibiotics and like all these preservatives. And if you wanted to eat wholesome, you had to do organic, and organic is not cheap. So my way into veganism actually was by default, because I was like, yo, I'm paying how much for what? Because, you probably get about like, I don't know, like 3 kilos of meat that is organic for the equivalent of like 3,000.
Damn, that's expensive.
And I was like, I don't have this kind of money, right? But I had made peace with what I had sort of gotten accustomed to, because now it was not Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that became like a pleasure sort of reward was nut milks, right? Because one of the things I really missed was the taste of milk.
Okay.
The taste and the texture of milk. And nut milks are also not very cheap in the States, but every once in a while I would treat myself. So it became like a pleasure treat, and I would just love to indulge in a nut milk or in a really good juice. They just used to bring me such fulfillment, especially in the period that I was in then, because there was a lot going on. And it would be my moment of zen, right? Like getting that really nice, cold, chilled nut milk. And again, it fell in line with my principle of Somalabl, because I would turn the label and I would read and I'd be like, oh, I can have this. It doesn't have, added sugars or this or that. So it was good for me. Fast forward, I moved back to Kenya, and I'm like, now that I'm a woke person, there's no way I'm dropping this lifestyle. And so I was like, okay, let me go find my usual nut milks and cold pressed juices and whatever. And I would go into the store and there was literally nothing. Every single package I would turn, I'd be like, Allah?
Not organic.
Not even necessarily the organic part. It's just what else was in there. I'll give you an example of peanut butter.
Your favorite example.
Oh, you remember this. Thank
But
you.
let us tell the people about peanut butter. Wanja.
Yes. So when I tell you peanut butter, see, it's butter made from peanuts.
Yeah.
What else needs to be in there? I literally challenge anybody who's not done this before. When you go to the supermarket, just turn the label of every single jar of peanut butter that you're buying and just read through the ingredients. Something as simple as peanut butter. Why are there 18 ingredients? Why are there 7 ingredients? What is yeast stabilizer? What is this? Right? And I'm like, and the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. I understand something like bread, you have to have yeast, right?
Yes.
Peanut butter, what do you need coloring for? Like, what are you coloring?
Wow.
Right? So when I came here and I was just getting so frustrated, I was like, I'm not gonna go off the rail because now I finally have that discipline and that consistency that I have been striving for a very long time in my life. I'm not about to let this go. So I said, F it. I'm gonna just start making my own stuff, right?
Wow.
And I bought, like, I remember on one of my trips back, because I still had not quite moved back. I was still going back and forth. I bought a cold press machine and I said, I'm just gonna start making my own juices and I'm gonna start making my own nut milks because they still were that outlet for moment of zen. They were that moment of, like joy and pleasure and whatever it is. And so I started testing it out with friends and family. And they would be like, yo, this is dope. And I'd be like, yeah, for real? I was like, maybe there's a business here, because I realized, because initially I thought I'm the only one who cared about the fact that I didn't want sugars, I didn't want preservatives. But it turned out a lot of the people that I did end up sampling this with would just be excited.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean it tastes this good and it doesn't have crap that's bad for me? And that kept coming up so often that I thought, I think I'm onto something here. And I was like, one of my biggest struggles when I came was being able to go into a supermarket and finding something that fits this, definition of wholesome, no added sugars. And I was like, and that's how the brand started and we started out with 2 products, which are still our foundational products, cold pressed juices, which are basically juices that are processed in a way that reduces friction and oxygen. That way you have a longer shelf life that is natural. It stays fresher longer. The taste is just richer, more cute. In fact, the number of times I have to convince people we don't add sugar.
Let me tell you, as somebody who consumes your products,
Yeah.
I'm like, but there's something here.
Yeah,
isn't.
People find it so hard to believe, but it's because when you cold press a juice or a fruit and vegetable, you're not exposing it to as much friction and oxygen, which is what breaks down a fruit and vegetable. Like if you cut a green apple, see, it turns that browning. That's just oxidation. And oxidation is just literally the fruit breaking down. And when it's breaking down, it's also breaking down the taste, the nutritional value, and how long it can stay without spoiling. So cold press minimizes the things that makes a fruit and vegetable go that. So of course it's going to preserve the sweetness more, right? So the business started with the idea of, because I had such a hard time finding this, I want to be able to make this available to other supermarkets. So we started out wanting to manufacture, the idea was
retail.
It was going straight to retail. It was the idea of a cafe never even came to me because I was like, these are the 2 products that I really love to do. I can do a variation of juices. I can do a variation of cold presses. And we started testing out at farmers markets and we would do deliveries and stuff. And from a marketing point, it made a lot of sense. Financially, it was not. And so we were like, okay, we need to set up a shop to be able to do this. And the opportunity came to start a CrossFit in Gigiri. And now when we had a cafe, it was like, we can't just sell cold pressed juices and nut milk.
You gotta do everything.
But I was very clear that everything has to fit within that ethos of, it's wholesome, it's good for you, and it tastes great, right? Like outright, because people will be like, well, why don't you do fries? And I'd be like, can I bake them? Because if you allow me to bake them, I'll do them. Right? And there are things that will just not even come up. Because we also started serving coffee, we would have like people come and try and pitch to us like coffee syrups. And I mean, like all these like vanillas and whatever. And I'd be like, No.
No.
It doesn't gel with the overall idea. My favorite is how we have always carried and will always carry jaggery. We don't do processed sugar. I'm like, if we're going to have sugar, it's going to be something that's good for you. So jaggery, which is pretty much dried up molasses, actually has nutritional value for you and benefits. And it's still a sweetener, which is the message we're constantly trying to say.
And is available.
And is available.
At the supermarket.
And is available at the supermarket, right? Which is the message that we're constantly trying to say, which is, imagine you can still do good for your body and have taste and joy from what you're doing.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be miserable because people think, oh, if I can't have sugar, I have to drink strongy. No.
That it's punishment.
Oh, it's punishment.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. Like, healthy does not have to taste like crap, guys.
You know, it's so amazing. I'm listening to you because you said earlier it was like you opened yourself up to this thing, and you, as you're going along the path, it's like all these opportunities come up that you would be training at CrossFit Kwetu and then end up opening the restaurant there. It's like, for me, I'm just like, that's so wild because you were like on another journey, but then it's like your paths almost intersected.
They did. They did. So at the time we opened, I wasn't like a member yet. I had done like a week trial with them, died and left because I was like,
not me.
I literally threw up.
Wow.
The week after I finished my trial week, because they were doing like this free pass, everything was hurting. I was like, whatever that is, I never want to do it again.
Don't feel good.
It does not feel good. So I left. But then now when I started making the product, I went to them to pitch. And I was like, hey, this is something, because they had a fridge. I was like, you can stock this. I was like, you know, we have nut milks, we have cold pressed juices, we have chia puddings. And then the conversation came from me pitching to, yo, we have a space here. Do you want it?
Wow. Damn.
Yeah, that's
so interesting.
That's how that started. And I think there was like 3 other people who had to do a pitch.
Yeah.
We all did pitches and they were like, okay, we feel like you're aligned to that.
100%, because I'm just like, that's your target market, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how has it worked?
It did. So initially it was really good because you have, like you're saying, a ready market.
Yeah.
People who are already in the mental space to accept and
health and all that.
And all that. The uphill battle that has been is because not only are we doing healthy, nut milks, hello. It's literally in the last year and a half that they've become a thing. Kenya didn't have its own production company until New Zealand and now Brookside are making.
Which I only remember from end of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's literally like 2.5 years ago. And when we started, that was the vision. Like, we want to be in that space.
Yeah.
And we've started that journey now, like that process. So our nut milks were all being imported.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? So now, not only are you doing healthy, which is already a smaller target group, you also have these 2 things which people are like, huh? Cold pressed juice. Why is this juice costing me 200 more shillings than the one down the street?
Yes.
Girl.
Yeah.
The amount of education we've had to do. But I'm also very grateful for that process because it's been this the stepping stones to learning and also building a culture and a community around this sort of lifestyle and these sort of products. So I'm not regretting any of that. So yes, it was great to do that. But then I think also the challenge became now you're pigeonholed because people automatically assume because if you have branches at gyms, you're like,
that's all.
That's the healthy brand. That's you, you know? And remember our idea of like healthy living or Somalabl, the conscious living we're talking about, has many forms.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Maybe you have like crazy weeks where you're not, you know, doing whatever, but then your juice is good.
Yeah.
Maybe you give up the soda and you switch. So you're still eating like crap, but
at least one thing.
You're starting to make that conscious decision.
Yeah.
Because that's how it started for me, right? Like it started with the fast that built up and has built up over the years. So it's the challenges. I feel like we got a little bit pigeonholed, but it's okay because now we're not there.
You're not, well, I wouldn't say you're pigeonholed anymore. I mean, you're at cafes, so sorry. I don't know if that doesn't define success. I don't know what else does. But also, I want to find out why start a podcast. Why are we sitting here on our podcast?
Because of what you said earlier about connections with people. Like anybody who's interacted with any Jusmu team member, they always say, "Oh gosh, you guys are so friendly and so welcoming and so warm," and da 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 da. And I'm like, for us, it's not just about selling to the person. It's also the connection with the person. Yes, it's a marketing element, but for me, it helps me if understanding our guests and our clients better helps me serve them better, right? Like the thing I was telling you about allergy earlier.
Yeah.
If I know you have an allergy, then I know how to better serve you and what to recommend. If I know that you've been, fighting a cold for the last 3 weeks and, you usually like to get X, then I know, we have this immunity booster that I can recommend. Or have you tried doing this? If I know that you're struggling with weight, and that's something that we come across a lot. People are like, I've been trying to, lose weight, da, 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 da. And we're like, hey, if you're looking at our menu, here are the low calorie options that are still tasty. And do you know what I mean?
That's so good.
So for us, being better connected with our guests is actually helping us accomplish our mission better, which is helping people realize, look, imagine there's a space for you at this table of wellness and conscious eating. And if you come at it just because you are trying to cure a cold, it's okay. It's a start. It's that doorway that has opened, the same way that fast opened that doorway for me.
Yeah.
So the podcast really came because I, within the Jusmu team, we'll say, we're a Jusmu family and whatever. And then I started to realize, because of also where we're located, which has been also, honestly, such a blessing, because even when we were Kwetu and now at Ngong Road, we always build a community around us. Like people feel like, I know you. In fact, if one person is not there, I'll hear like a guest like Priska, who loves like Sue, will always be like, wait, Sue? Sue's not here. I'm not,
That's literally like me when Betty went away. I'm like, where's Betty?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, Betty knows how I like my RX.
Yeah.
So I'm like, has she told somebody else how to make my RX?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
And it made me feel like, okay, and I can't even tell you how many birthdays I attend or personal celebrations, because people just become like family.
Oh, that's lovely.
And then I realized, I was like, but what's the story behind it?
Yeah.
Right? Because I was like, I know why I do this. I know why I eat like this. I know why I have this workout lifestyle. How do I learn about these people who are eating here? I really want to get to know you better. Like, tell me, where's the connection, right? It's building that connection with the people who you've obviously seen there's a space of overlap or interest.
Yeah.
And then you just want to know, what is it that is tying us together? So that's how the podcast started. And it started very shakily. Again, I've had tremendous support from people. Wabsy and Kathy, who I know we will have at some point. I just literally got like my phone and I was like, hey, let's just start this conversation. I really wanted to know the why. And then, of course, I came across, and then can I just tell you, like, because you listened to that thing, like 3 months after I had done it, or it had been a time?
It had been a while. Yeah, maybe
it had
like
been a
3-4
while
months. Yeah.
Because I had tried to edit it, and I was like, I just want to put something together that is simple. And I was like, I can't do this. And then we had that conversation, and it was like, the road rises up to meet you. And what were the chances that you were at Ngong Road?
Right?
That is not...
Training with the boys, and then we meet, and then,
That was not by accident.
Yeah.
I totally don't believe that's by accident. And I think that's also why earlier I said, really appreciate the small moments and gifts in life. Because imagine if I never appreciated, even when we were not working like this, that time we met, if it was just sort of like I had just dismissed that
that's so true,
relationship, or not even seen it for the moment it was, and been like, hey, I see you, great, good to know you, da 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 da. And then that allow that seedling to bloom, because I would not have known who to turn to for this. And then just how everything worked out so beautifully. Like you weren't in the middle of like crazy projects, because that could have been happened too, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You could have been like, yo, man, I just got this gig. Nice idea, but
Talk to somebody else.
Talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
So for me, this podcast and everything that has worked out has just been another step into that, like, which is the road rising up to meet you. Having somebody who has the know-how, the talent, the passion, and because also this is a story you can relate to, which we're obviously gonna get to.
Yeah.
That the match was just beautiful, in my opinion. So the Somalabl was like, how do we give other people the moment I had from that woman on the pulpit that day? Because I'd had so many other stories, or had seen testimonials of all the people with the shakes that I was trying. Because all this, everybody's swearing by the green tea or this advice and this advice. And nothing really clicked. But that story clicked for me. And it spurred a journey that is now, 10 years over? So why not do that? Why not fill the space with stories of other people who I think are just as normal as I am, as normal as everybody else? Because we all have this sense of ideal that we never think we can reach.
Yeah.
I admired those years ago that extreme fitness guy waking up at 4 a.m. when I was nowhere near being that person. And then 6 years later, I'm that person.
Yeah.
But how did I get there? Right? So what if we can put stories that people will be like, Allah, that makes sense for me. And just
could be me.
Find a spot and just start pulling the thread. And you never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah.
I never saw myself as competitive. I had it in me. It's something I admired other people doing.
Right.
But ask me that like 10 years ago, I would never be this person. Even like hosting and cooking and all that stuff. So let me also be very clear, another thing about Juice Moon.
That is the restaurant.
That is the restaurant. Because of the lifestyle I lived then in the States, it was very important for me that what I make be, I just came off my sugar addiction, so I needed something still sweet and enjoyable, something that was quick to make, and something that did my body good. So my specialty at Juice Moon is doing that. So I'm the one who does like the smoothie, the puddings or whatever. The more elaborate, like, thingy recipes.
Yeah.
I call in a friend and I say, here's my idea. Let's work on this.
Nice.
Because it happens. I mean, people know, like they come to the house. I'm like, look, my job is serving people all day. I'm not about to do that. Nice. So I'm like, quick, what can I do for you that's really quick that will hit those 3 things? It'll taste great. It'll be good for you. And it's going to be quick to make.
Wow.
So for me, it's also been very important, like, to be able to do that within Juice Moon. Because I'm like, I don't want people to complain the way I used to complain. Like, oh my God, this is going to take so long. And eating healthy is so hard. No, it's not.
Give me fries.
Give me fries. No, actually, it's the amount of time it takes to prepare fries. I can give you something that is 10 times better for you, really tasty and fast.
Nice.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, that's also been a thing. So who knows what story will connect with somebody out there. So that's why Somalabl came about. And I also like how we came about, okay, what is Somalabl going to be about? Is it just eating healthy and being CrossFitters?
Yeah. And also in a way that, because for me, I didn't understand the brand, of course, until we started talking about the podcast and just also understanding it in the context of Kenya. And I'm so glad that your journey started here, because sometimes people can make this thing about being outside. Because I lived in SA, and of course there's more, I use organic loosely, but there was more options. Of course, there's more vegans and stuff like that. But then I also met the journey here. It wasn't while I was outside. So I think it's so important, even when we're having the conversation, for people to realize this isn't Ngong Road type of conversation. This is a anybody type of conversation because we are privileged to have so much fresh stuff in this country. And so figuring out that journey doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be, I went to a nutritionist and I paid them a crap load of money to give. No, there's a simple way of coming at this. And I think one of the things I'm passionate about is about simplifying the process. Even when people ask me about fitness, they're like, oh, I want to do what I'm just like, wait, you don't have to do what I'm doing. Let's break it down for you at your level level because
Yeah.
I know I'm privileged.
Yeah.
So the thing I really appreciate about also how you approach it is just making it simple and accessible to everyone, which I think is just fantastic.
No, I live that. Because that's who I am. Honestly, I don't have like 6 hours to be grueling over meals, and that's usually most people's excuse, right? I don't have
Yeah.
time. Even now, when I meal prep, sometimes I'm like, yo, do I call somebody to just do this meal prep for me? Because how am I supposed to do this? But then there's another thing actually I left out, which is pretty major, and I think this is one of the things I was debating about if it's something that I'm ready to, talk about in the open. So I don't know if I've made a strong case for why fitness now is important to me. Before, I remember it was like chasing the body or whatever. The last, so again, we say from 2020 is when I really became consistent with the fitness, right?
Yeah.
And it just became a routine and a habit and that sort of thing. So mid 2022, July through about like August, September, I was not able to come to the gym, right? I had a very intense, high intense work job situation that just, I couldn't afford time to work out. And I literally, towards the end of that period, because it was just such a devastating situation emotionally and mentally, I sunk into, I don't even want to call it depression. It was beyond depression for me. It was suicidal. Like I literally became suicidal to the point where I had done my notes, sent my messages. Yeah, no, it was bad. And I was done. I was literally done because I was like, blah, 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 blah. Remember I told you my thing is bringing people together to do something amazing.
Yeah.
And I felt like this was a culmination of that passion. I'm like, wow, we're actually going to be able to bring millions of people to do something incredible that is going to serve the greater good. And when that wasn't accomplished in the way it was, and I had a session with my therapist the other day, which sort of tied this. She said, because you feel your life's purpose is so tied to those outcomes, the minute that outcome did not come that way, you wondered, what is your purpose anymore? Right? Like, what am I here for? The ultimate opportunity has lost. And when I reflect on how close I came to suicide, I realize during that time I was not working out. Remember I told you now, this thing had now stabilized me. First of all, the food, eating healthy helped me a lot because even prior to becoming vegan or being woke or whatever, I was very emotionally erratic. I would have great moments and then I would have anxiety. I would have great moments and then I would have anxiety. It was just that feeling of, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, oh my God, right? But eating healthy kind of stabilized it, but it never really took it away. Fitness is what locked it. Because now, as you know, the endorphins and all the healthy benefits you get from actually moving your body actually helps you stabilize your mood. And the other thing that helped me that stabilized my mood, because now that I was working out so much, I was expending additional energies that as a vegan, there are things we don't get.
Right.
Because we don't do animal products.
Yeah.
So something like B12, which is only found in animal products, your iron levels obviously are compromised. And B12 is a key element you need for brain stability and brain cognitive function. My fitness journey and my quest for performance, I came across a nutritionist who really helped me now be like, okay, we need to start supplementing, which is something that I was not doing. So when I started supplementing, I was even stabilized even further. Like my mood and my mental health was just better stabilized. But remember now the third piece of that leg was the fitness.
Yeah.
So these 3 months, actually maybe even 4, that I went without hitting the gym did not help at all. And I just crashed, right? And it wasn't until I started working out again that I started to feel myself and I was like, so fitness to me is no longer just about looking good or lifting heavy stuff anymore. I used to jokingly tell people, hey, but there, this place is mental health. I really didn't understand.
Yeah.
It wasn't until this last year, like November now, when I went back to the gym, that I was like, yo.
For real.
This shit, like, it's straight up mental health. And I can feel it when I don't go to the gym, because now it's a space that helps me stay sane and sober. Right?
Nice.
So I was debating if I really needed to say that, but as we were talking, I was like, yeah, somebody may not get, well, why does the fitness now matter?
Yeah.
It has finally clicked for me why the fitness matter and why I'm now consistent. So now my discipline is encased in the idea that now I need to stay sane. I need to stay sane. I need to stay alive. So that's why I work out. Everything else is just an afterthought. Yeah.
I don't know if you've realized that in this conversation we've had, you've covered emotional, you've covered spiritual, you've covered psychological, you've covered physical. And I feel like, I guess, because I have my own version of that story, it's so important that when people talk about balance, because they throw that word around a lot, that balance is all of those things.
Yeah.
It's not just like work-life balance. I'm just like, what's that though? Because a lot of us have been operating on an imbalance for such a long time.
Yeah.
And the effects are unseen.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about mental health that you don't see. But then it really is chemical. I'm so glad you talked about B12 and all of that, because you have to rebalance the chemicals.
You do.
That's all it is. It's science, but really, guys, that's all. And it's the food and it's the fitness and it's therapy. It's all of that. And I'm so glad that this is where the conversation ended up, because I feel like this now makes sense.
Yeah.
We're not just saying go do fasting and then, no, it's like we're really saying be conscious of your whole being and how you're managing what you're putting in, whether good or bad, because it's gonna come and collect.
Oh, yeah.
Someday.
Very true. Yeah.
I am so glad you joined us for today's conversation. Every time I have the privilege of listening to one of our guests share their story, there's always a lesson or a message that just touches me. And I hope this is true for you too. And if you can find a friend, or maybe two, who you can share this episode with, please do. It'll help us grow our conscious living community. We would also love to stay connected with you and hear from you. Reach out to us on socials on our handle, Somalabl, SOMALABL. Once again, thank you, and we can't wait to see you again on our next Somalabl episode. Goodbye.